On our wedding day, I looked at Thomas across from me, his impatient expression. Suddenly, I felt like it was all pointless. The officiant asked me, "Bride, do you take the groom to be your husband?" I took off my veil and smiled. "No, I don't." Chapter 1. Thomas and I had been entangled for 12 years. How many 12 years does one have in a lifetime? Thomas, as you wished. I give you your freedom. With those words, I left without looking back. I checked into a hotel, turned off my phone, and buried myself in sleep. In my dream, it felt like I was back to being 16 again. When I first met Thomas, he was still a boy, not fully grown. At that time, my parents had passed away in a car accident, leaving behind a huge compensation. Whoever could gain custody of me would have the right to manage that money. When true gold meets true love, which one is truly genuine? I didn't know. I told the lawyer that I didn't need a guardian, and that I just wanted the money to stay safe until I was of age. My grandmother scolded me for being an ungrateful wretch, saying how good my uncle had been to me. My aunt said, "How can you be so heartless? Can't you just help us out a bit?" I left with a cold face, because they forgot that, before all this, they had said I was unlucky and that I had been the one who caused my parents' deaths. I transferred schools and rented a new apartment, thinking I'd be strong, but it wasn't until I had a fever and started convulsing, forcing myself to go out to buy medicine, that I truly felt helpless and lonely. That day, in the narrow and dimly lit hallway, I met Thomas. He was walking toward me, backlit, like a savior sent by fate, heading straight for me. I fainted in his arms. At 16, I was convinced Thomas was the light that would lead me out of the darkness. Chapter 2. I had been sick for half a month, and during that time, Thomas, who lived across the street, took care of me. After his parents found out about my situation, they were very kind to me too. At 16, after losing my parents and being abandoned by everyone, I was lucky enough to find warmth again. I clung to that warmth, trying to make myself burn brighter. Once I recovered, Thomas took me out for a walk. We sat on the lawn, enjoying the sunlight, and he looked at me quietly, smiling as he said, "Ophelia, I am your lifesaver. You must repay me for this favor." His bright, youthful smile was etched into my memory from that moment. I smiled and asked him, "So, how do you want me to repay you?" "My lifesaver?" He blushed and stammered, unable to say anything further. After transferring schools, Thomas and I became desk partners. He was excellent in his studies, and the questions I couldn't solve, he could. He would always gently and patiently teach me until I understood. Looking back at that time, my heart is still warm. I loved Thomas back then, and I believed he loved me as much as I loved him. But people change. Love fades. The reason one feels warmth is because the cold is constantly reminding her of it. Chapter 3. When I woke from my restless dream, it was already the afternoon of the next day. My phone was filled with unread messages. I quickly skimmed through a few, most of them from friends. "Ophelia, you and Thomas have been together for so many years. How can you just call off the wedding like this? Such a shame. Ophelia, you two were the envy of everyone. How could this happen?" I didn't have the energy to explain much, especially when Thomas's call came through. "Where are you?" Just those few simple words. Yet I could hear endless impatience in his tone. It was as if I were the clingy one, always pestering him. I remembered he hadn't always been like this. In the past, each word he said was full of tenderness. Just hearing him say my name would make my heart melt. When had he changed? Suddenly, his questions were like a series of rapid fire. "What do you mean by this? Ophelia, what have I done wrong? Do you want to embarrass me in front of all these relatives and friends? What are you doing now? What's the deal? Who are you showing that attitude to? You've been like this for years. If I had known, I wouldn't have saved you." Yes, after so many years of love, he had probably regretted it for many years. But now, he still thought I was just throwing a tantrum, causing trouble. "I'll come back tonight. Let's talk. We can regret things. We can watch the bubbles burst." But I had to give those 12 years an explanation. He sneered and said, "I'm busy. I made time to marry you. I told you to wait." But you insisted on this timing. Then, he sarcastically added, if you want to get married, I'll go along with it. What more are you dissatisfied with? How cheap I had become. After all these years. In the end, I had become the one pushing him. His unwillingness was obvious, and I had lost the force to push. I know you're busy, so we don't need to get married anymore. I'll save you some time, he growled, his voice heavy with anger. Ophelia, do you think marriage is a joke? If we don't get married, don't ever mention marriage again. In the future? How could there be a future for us? At this point, he still thought I was just making a fuss, using the future to force me into compromising. Fine. He was silent for a long time, and when the sound came back, it was the beeping noise of the call being hung up. I smiled, but the curve of my lips was the bitterest it had ever been. Chapter 4. No matter what happened between Thomas and Tang, I was still raised in the Tang family. Tang's mother had always been very kind to me, and everything had a beginning and an end. I owed her an explanation. It was lunchtime, and we agreed to meet at a nearby restaurant. When I arrived, Tang's mother had a worried look on her face, but when she saw me, she still forced a smile. I felt a little uncomfortable, especially when I saw the table full of my favorite dishes. My nose felt a bit sore. Auntie, she urged me to sit down quickly and asked if I was okay. Of course, I wasn't okay, but I still said I was fine. She didn't say much, just quietly watched me eat. I hadn't eaten anything since yesterday, and I was starving. After finishing the meal, I looked up to see Tang's mother gazing at me with a look full of love. She took my hand, looked me up and down, and suddenly, tears welled up in her eyes. Ophelia, how did you get so thin? No matter what, you need to remember to eat properly. Such care was something I had missed for many years and had now regained, but I didn't know how long I would have it. I held back the lump in my throat and smiled. Auntie, I've been eating well. Tang's mother sighed and gently touched my face. Ophelia, you and Thomas, how did you both end up like this? At that moment, my tears flooded out. The mental wall I had built up collapsed in an instant. Yes. How did we end up like this? Was it time? Or was it that people's hearts are easily changed? I didn't explain much to Tang's mother. At this point, words didn't mean much. She didn't say much either. Just asked me to think things over carefully and not to let myself down. Actually, if things between Thomas and I had gone smoothly, it wouldn't have been so bad. But of course, things didn't go as planned. Tang's father suddenly had a heart attack, and the expensive medical bills put the family in a precarious situation. The household expenses for the three of them depended solely on Tang's mother's work. Thomas had always been excellent, his grades consistently at the top. But on the night when the acceptance letter from the prestigious university we both got into arrived, Tang's mother smiled and cried at the same time. Child, you've done so well. Mom is sorry. Thomas sat on the sofa, his head lowered, his whole body filled with gloom. When he looked up again, it was still the same mature, yet heartbreaking smile. It's okay, Mom. I know Dad just had surgery and the family doesn't have the money. I can skip university. I'll go work and take care of you both. He tried to appear calm, as if it were nothing, but the redness in his eyes pierced my heart. On the balcony, in the night breeze, the figure of the boy looked so fragile. That night, I remembered the nights years ago when he had supported me in the night wind. I quietly walked to his side, forced a light smile, and said, I'm a little rich girl, my lifesaver. Do you want me to repay you? He froze for a second. His face darkened. Ophelia, how could I ever take your money? Absolutely not. At that time, I didn't understand. We loved each other, so why wouldn't he accept my help? That was our first argument. By the time the moon had risen, and the cool air made our lips tremble slightly, I compromised. I told myself that he was just carefully protecting his dignity. In fact, between his pride and me, he had already made his choice. But one thing was clear, he had to go to school. Chapter 5. I started working part-time with Thomas to earn money. At first, he worked as a tutor. Because he had done so well on the college entrance exam, there were plenty of parents eager to hire him. Soon, he had more and more students, but of course, When someone rises too fast, envy always follows. One day, a child cried and falsely accused him of child abuse. After that, no one wanted to hire him again. The disheartened young man clenched the lesson plan in his hands, as though the world had abandoned him. I patted his shoulder and said softly, "It's okay, let's deliver food together. If that doesn't work, we can hand out flyers." He pulled me into his arms. That faint scent of jasmine that used to linger around him had faded long ago, but I still remember it clearly. "I'm sorry, Ophelia. I'll cherish you from now on, and I'll make it up to you." That whole summer, despite the merciless sun and the sweat dripping down our faces, I didn't feel it was hard at all. On the contrary, during that summer, the future he promised me felt so real that I believed it completely. Back then, neither of us ever imagined that such sincere and passionate love would one day disappear into the river of time. I wandered the streets alone, aimlessly and without purpose. My phone kept buzzing. When I opened it, I saw that our school alumni chat group was discussing me and Thomas. There were many voices, but they all meant the same thing: what happened to the golden couple of Thomas and Ophelia? Because I was still in the group, they didn't dare gossip too boldly. But what I didn't expect was that one senior actually tagged Thomas directly and wrote, "Some men are just useless. It's bad enough being incompetent, but they can't stand anyone better than them." In an instant, the group went dead silent. Even though it was just a virtual chat room, I could feel the chill of awkwardness seeping through the screen. Of course, Thomas wouldn't reply. The group soon went quiet again. I absent-mindedly bought a cup of milk tea. The street was crowded, but I couldn't hear a single sound. I'd been hungry for so long that even eating or drinking felt like a chore. Then my phone buzzed again. Someone had replied to the senior. Alicia sent a sweating, side-eye emoji first, then followed it with a long message. "Senior, are you misunderstanding something? You don't even know Thomas. Isn't what you said a little unfair? Did someone tell you something?" The senior replied almost instantly. "Oh, and who might this be? Isn't it that pretentious coquette Alicia, the one who knew he had a girlfriend but kept clinging to him? Don't think everyone's as clueless as Thomas. If you love to act so much, I'll build you a stage tomorrow." The senior's words were merciless, but I couldn't help thinking she wasn't entirely wrong about Alicia's behavior. I smiled faintly, tears gathering at the corners of my eyes. Chapter 6. When did Alicia appear between Thomas Tang and me? Tang's father's illness had always been unstable, usually managed only by medication. During that period, Tang's mother fell ill as well, and the family's financial situation worsened again. After Tang's father stopped taking his medicine for a while, his condition relapsed, and he was rushed into the emergency room. The doctor said a second surgery was needed, and for the Tang family, that meant a huge expense. Without hesitation, I paid for the operation. Outside the hospital room, the doctor announced with sweat on his forehead that the surgery had gone well. The moment Thomas, who had been hanging his head, looked up, there was a strange light in his eyes. He stared at me, his voice slow but firm. "Ophelia, thank you, really, thank you." I smiled and gently hugged him. "We're family. You don't need to be so polite." His arms tightened, as if he wanted to merge me into his body. I didn't know how long we stayed like that. By the time he finally had the strength to go into the ward, my shoulder was already soaked through. I thought to myself, "Thomas, you truly deserve it. You deserve all the good I give you." Later, in Tang's father's hospital room, I met Alicia for the first time. She had her hair in a fluffy bun, and two deep dimples appeared when she smiled. She placed a basket of fruit and milk on the table and asked affectionately, "Uncle, are you feeling better?" Tang's father looked a little dazed, so Thomas introduced her. "This is Alicia, a junior student working with me on a research project." Tang's mother frowned slightly, her gaze subtly scanning Alicia from head to toe. The belatedly aware Alicia quickly walked to Tang's mother's side, still smiling with that pure and sweet yet lively expression. "Auntie, hello. Oh, I also brought some soup my mother made for Uncle. It's good for recovery." Thomas smiled too. "Yes, Auntie's cooking is really good." Alicia's gaze lingered on Thomas, filled with a passionate and unmistakable feeling. She liked Thomas, I could feel it. And it wasn't just a simple crush. It was the kind of love that refused to give up. Alicia stayed in the room for about 20 minutes before saying goodbye and leaving. I stepped out to ask the doctor about Tang's father's condition, and when I returned, I happened to overhear Tang's mother warning Thomas. Thomas, what's going on between you and that girl? Thomas paused for a second, then denied it. What could there be? Mom? Don't overthink it. We're just ordinary friends. Tang's mother sighed in relief. That's good, Thomas. You must never let Ophelia down. Thomas's tone was sincere, at least. In that moment, it was. Don't worry. I won't. So, when Alicia appeared, I didn't guard myself against her. I truly believed that the love between Thomas and me could never be broken by anyone else. Chapter 7. But I never expected Alicia to appear so often. Thomas, who never liked using his phone before, started chatting on WeChat all the time. Sometimes, he would stare at the screen and giggle to himself. When I finished work and leaned against him, smiling as I asked what was so funny, he would jolt, quickly turn off the screen, and stiffly say, "Nothing. Someone just sent me a funny emoji." I knew what I was about to do was shameful, but I couldn't bear the torment of suspicion any longer. That night, while he was asleep, I looked at his WeChat messages. As I suspected, it was Alicia. "Good morning, Senior. Don't tell me a lazy bug like you is still asleep. Get up. I'm going to the park with some classmates today. I'll send you a few pretty pictures later." "I think you're the lazy one. Remember that camping trip? You said we'd go hiking. But who was the one who slept beside me for 3 hours and couldn't be woken even with a straw? He didn't even have time to kiss me good morning anymore. But he had time to exchange greetings with another girl. They were constantly sharing pieces of their daily life with each other. In his photo album, I even found several pictures of Alicia at the park. Their words weren't exactly over the line, but after reading them, I felt cold all over. "Senior, I really want to eat beefsteak with green peppers. Didn't you say you're really good at making that dish? You're amazing. I wouldn't even know where to start." Thomas sent her a smug emoji, and Alicia replied with a pitiful one. "Then can I have beefsteak with green peppers for lunch tomorrow?" "Sure, I'll make you a big portion. Don't eat so much you get a stomachache." Alicia sent a silly smiling emoji back. "It's fine if it hurts. You took me to the hospital last time I twisted my ankle anyway." Thomas sent back a troublemaker emoji. After reading all that, I put down his phone. Looking at his sleeping face, it looked the same as before, yet somehow completely different. When had it started? When did the things he was supposed to do with me become things he did with her? I used to think that the beefsteak with green peppers was something only he made for me. But in the end, he made it for another girl. The boy who once belonged to me didn't seem so pure anymore. I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned. I didn't even know if I should ask him whether I should still keep his seat at the restaurant tomorrow. It was my birthday. After all, of course, he didn't come. He seemed to forget that while he was bringing food to another girl, there was still someone else waiting for him, longing for his shadow on her birthday. It wasn't until I called him that evening that he suddenly seemed to realize and apologized. "I'm sorry, Ophelia. I've been so busy. It completely slipped my mind." "Don't worry. I'll make it up to you." He said he wouldn't be back until midnight because he had data to analyze. I said okay and hung up. I brought the meal I'd made myself to the campus. Just as I entered the school gate, it started pouring rain. I was drenched, shivering, and my vision blurred through the downpour, but even through the rain, I could clearly see the boy who once gave me warmth, the one who had promised to make me feel safe. Now giving that same shoulder to Alicia, he carried Alicia on his back. Stepping carefully and seriously through a puddle, Alicia laughed softly against his shoulder. He held an umbrella in one hand. Rainwater dripped steadily from its edge as he looked back at her, his eyes full of tenderness. They exchanged a glance and smiled sweetly at each other. I called Thomas. I saw him take his phone out of his pocket, only for Alicia to snatch it away and hang up. My phone fell to the ground, along with the meal I had made for him. That was when I started to question our 12 years together. Maybe it wasn't as strong as I imagined. Maybe it had always been full of cracks. I still remember that night's rain. It was so heavy, so cold, that even now, I can still feel that bone-deep chill. Chapter 8. Just like now, the sky began to drizzle again. I couldn't help but let out a bitter laugh. Heaven was still unfair to me. Why was it that every time I was already hurting, it had to strike me again? I tossed my milk tea into the trash, and as I turned around, a car stopped beside me. Thomas stepped out, holding a bank card between his fingers. His face was dark with anger as he threw the card at my feet. Ophelia, is this the card you gave my mom? What's that supposed to mean, breakup money? I glanced down. It was indeed the one I had given to Mrs. Tang earlier. I nodded. Before I could even say a word, Thomas suddenly grabbed my wrist tightly. Do you think money can solve everything? Once, I was his Ophelia, but now, I was just another name to him, like any other stranger. Our 12 years together seemed unchanged on the surface, yet everything had already become unrecognizable. Still, I couldn't deny, he was still that same Thomas. The Thomas the first once loved. No matter what lay ahead, I wanted to keep this love beautiful in my memory. So I explained softly, Auntie has treated me better than my own mother all these years. This was just my way of showing her gratitude. He gave a cold laugh and shook his head, his expression full of disdain. She's my mother. I'll take care of her myself. I don't need you to. That's even better. I nodded. Then consider it breakup money. His face turned red with fury, his eyes icy cold. Ophelia, what the hell do you want? My patience has its limits. I took a deep breath and tilted my head toward the sky. Raindrops hit my forehead, sharp and cold. But strangely, it made me feel clearer than ever. At least now, I knew I never wanted to stand in the rain again. Let's break up, I said. My heart hurt, but the heaviness in my legs felt lighter. Thomas, 12 years of love have become a burden for you. We're both tired. I'm willing to return to you the freedom you've been longing for. The harsh redness in his eyes faded, leaving only confusion. He stood there for a long time before meeting my gaze, as if trying to confirm something. Are you serious? I looked at him and nodded. His face went stiff. The corners of his lips trembled ever so slightly. Ophelia, I could tolerate you turning our wedding into a joke, but don't keep pushing my limits. I let out a cold laugh and asked him, limits? Thomas, what exactly are your limits? I asked him seriously, staring straight into his eyes, desperate to find the answer I wanted. My limits? Ophelia, don't you already know what my limits are? Chapter 9. Yes, I knew. When we were young, I never thought much about it, but by the time we graduated, I began to realize it. Maybe, for Thomas, it was fine for me to be excellent, just not more excellent than him. After graduation, our paths diverged. He wanted to stay at our university for graduate school, but since his family was struggling financially, I suggested, why don't I go out and work instead? He held my hand tightly and said firmly, no, if someone has to work, it'll be me. You should focus on your studies. Then he smiled and added, besides, it's hard to find a job these days. I'm afraid you won't get one. I didn't think much of it back then, but now, looking back, wasn't there a subtle kind of condescension in his eyes? I'll give it a try. I told him, if I can't find a job, I'll come back and take the postgraduate exam. Don't worry about me. I thought my reassurance would comfort him, but instead, he seemed annoyed, frowning as he stood up. Ophelia, why do you never listen to me? I said you won't find one, and you won't. It was then I began to sense something strange in his character. I always acted out of good intentions for his sake, but somehow, I always ended up being the one in the wrong. That night, we argued for a long time. Neither of us backed down. It ended with us shouting at each other, him smashing the teacup I had given him, and storming out. Looking at the shards on the floor, the chaos around me, it felt as though my heart had been sliced open by a tiny blade. I was terrified of that feeling of loss. I had already lost the most important things once. I didn't want to experience that pain again. I couldn't breathe, yet I still forced my trembling legs to run after him. All I could see was his back in the distance. I didn't notice the car speeding toward me until it was too late. The world spun upside down, and before I lost consciousness, the last thing I saw was the look on that boy's face. When I woke up again, Thomas was by my bed, staring at me, his eyes red for the first time. Ophelia, you're awake. I'm so sorry. So sorry. He gripped my right hand tightly. His knuckles were white, his face filled with overwhelming guilt. In that moment, The shattered teacup no longer mattered. The boy I loved was still here, anything else could be replaced. I smiled weakly, tugging at the bandage on my head. It's okay. He hugged me tightly. Let's not fight anymore, okay? Ophelia, you don't know how scared I was. In that warmth, I had a foolish thought. If I could live peacefully and happily with Thomas for the rest of my life, I wouldn't mind being hit by a car every day. He kept saying sorry, again and again, but I truly hadn't blamed him. There was another person in the room, a woman with short hair, sharp eyes, and a confident air. She spoke clearly, each word crisp. I'm sorry, let me introduce myself. My name is Skylar. I'm the one who accidentally hit you. I didn't know then that Skylar would become a turning point in my life. We both shared an interest in engineering, and she invited me to start a business with her. She presented a flawless plan, thorough and well thought out, covering every angle. I was moved. When I told Thomas, he smiled and said, "Starting a business? That's not easy, you know." But since I was still recovering, he didn't argue with me further. When Skylar and I began our venture, Thomas told me more than once, "You two are just playing around. It won't last long." I didn't take it to heart. Skylar had a deep understanding of the market, and I had strong execution skills. The days of starting a business weren't easy. Sometimes, we went 2 nights without sleep, revising the same proposal page over and over. But heaven rewards those who persevere. Gradually, things began to improve. Our business grew. And now, we even have a solid place in City A. Thomas stopped criticizing me, but looking back, I realized that's when our conversations began to fade. Silence replaced the good morning kisses. Beef steak with green peppers turned into leftovers casually packed from takeout. Even when we lay in bed at night, he always faced away from me. He said, "I've been busy with research lately." But back then, I was busy too, so busy I didn't notice how far that boy beside me was drifting away. Chapter 10. But if I became ordinary, would Thomas really come back to me and love me wholeheartedly again? I didn't dare to bet on that. I used to love him deeply, but I've always been the kind of person who prepares for the worst. If I made his love the meaning of my life, then when he stopped loving me, would I have to die for it? I couldn't do that. Thomas, it doesn't matter anymore. I didn't care about you now, so your limits, your pride as a man, I no longer felt obliged to protect them. Ophelia, it's been 12 years. Everyone knows we're inseparable. What are you doing this for? Do you really think it's necessary? Acting like this will only make me hate you more. Hate. Listen to that. Hate? Why would anyone want to spend a lifetime with someone they hate? Does Alicia know? I asked. Who? Thomas froze for a moment. Why are you bringing her up? What does she have to do with this? If everyone knows we're inseparable, then tell me, does Alicia know? It was as if I had stepped on his nerve. Ophelia, stop dragging unrelated people into this. If you want to break up, fine. Just don't regret it later. I shook my head, my voice calm. I won't. After all these years, you should know what kind of person I am. I never regret my decisions. He got into his car, slammed the door hard, and drove off. Mud splashed all over me. See? The man I once loved didn't even have the courage to admit he'd strayed in love. I really should have thrown him away sooner. Chapter 11. I moved out and bought a small house, nothing fancy, but quiet. When my senior found out about my breakup with Thomas, she suggested bringing some friends over for a housewarming. She was worried I might spiral into sadness, so she even brought alcohol. I cooked a few dishes, and we all sat around the table. At first, no one dared to bring up Thomas, but as the night went on, they began to realize something. After ending a 12-year relationship, I didn't seem nearly as heartbroken as they expected. Indeed, I was surprised too. After losing Thomas, I only felt a dull ache in fleeting moments of loneliness. After all, I had long understood that life is meant to be lived for oneself, and my world was never just about Thomas. Curiosity eventually got the better of them. A few classmates couldn't resist asking, "Why did you break up with Thomas? I remember you two being really close." My answer was simple, and it was honest. Maybe we just fell out of love. We were both tired. The room fell silent. Their faces turned unreadable, but it was the truth. Love isn't just reckless passion, it's also responsibility. In love, we may grow weary, but we should never become fickle. Someone who can't stay faithful in love is not the future I want. Chapter 12. With my classmates' company, my mood indeed became much better than before. Besides, business had been keeping me extremely busy, and before long, I got used to living alone. But Thomas, it seemed, hadn't. He showed up at my doorstep, eyes sunken, a few stubbles on his chin, and even his body had grown thinner. I was a little surprised. After all, in my impression, Thomas had always been confident and high-spirited. I had never seen him so desolate before. He smiled at me, a bright, radiant smile, yet it carried a trace of impurity, something that made my chest ache. I felt like he was destroying the beautiful memories I once had of him. "Ophelia," he said, "I have some free time lately. Why don't we pick a day and book a restaurant to hold the wedding again? Don't worry. I've already explained everything to our relatives and friends from last time. They won't say anything." His tone carried a hint of pleading, and my heart ached. But I knew there was no going back for us. Even now, when he softly called my name Ophelia, I couldn't help but recall that moment when his eyes were bloodshot, and he shouted Ophelia through gritted teeth. "There's no need, Thomas. I've already returned your freedom. What we had was beautiful. Let's keep that beauty preserved in our memories. No one is truly indispensable to another. Let's go embrace our own futures. Isn't that better?" His eyes turned red as he whispered, "Ophelia, what happened between us? Where did we go wrong? How did it come to this?" "Yes, how indeed. You should be asking yourself that. Thomas, please, leave." He grabbed my hand, shaking his head. "I won't leave. Ophelia, have you forgotten what we promised each other? We said we'd buy a big villa, have 2 kids, and live a happy life together until the end. Those promises were truly beautiful once, but someone had broken the balance between us first. I wasn't as strong as I looked. Honestly, I have a bit of emotional cleanliness. Once I sense something or someone that no longer belongs to me, I erase my mark from it. Yes, I bought the villa. I treated your parents well. I kept my promise. But what about you?" He froze, speechless. I looked straight into his eyes. "Do you still love me?" "Of course I love you," I sneered. "But do you only love me?" He hesitated, guilt flickering in his gaze, but that silence was already an answer. "Wasn't it?" I sighed. "Thomas, I don't want to make this any uglier than it already is. I once loved you deeply, and I believe you loved me too. But now, let's just let go." He lowered his head and left. His figure still looked as thin as before, but my heart no longer burned as it once did. I could no longer warm him. Chapter 13. Mrs. Tang called me and invited me over for dinner. It just so happened that I had lived in their home for many years, and there were still a few of my belongings left there. When I arrived, not only were the 3 of them there, but several close relatives had also gathered. At the dinner table, the relatives all took turns playing peacemakers, talking one after another. "Ophelia, dear, I've always thought highly of you since you were little," said one uncle. "Now you've grown into such a beautiful young woman with a great career. Isn't it time to think seriously about your life?" "Yes," my aunt chimed in. "I remember you and Thomas always had such a good relationship. Thomas told us last time that it was his fault. We women, after all, just want a good home and a reliable man in this life. Don't be too hard on him. No matter how good your job is, it's still not as important as finding a good husband." Another relative added, "Thomas is such a fine young man. After more than 10 years together, how can you just break up like that? You're not children anymore. Don't be so immature." Mrs. Tang held my hand and sighed. "It's all Thomas's fault. Every bit of it. If you're upset, just take it out on him. He won't dare to talk back. But, child, my heart aches for you. I know Thomas still loves you. Human nature truly seeks benefit and avoids harm. No matter how much she once treated me like her own daughter, in the end, she was still Thomas's mother. And as for those relatives of the Tang family, what did their words have to do with me anymore? I had already made up my mind to cut ties cleanly. I smiled, lifted my glass, and toasted each of them in turn. "Thank you all for taking care of me over the years. You might not fully understand what happened between Thomas and me, But I'm no longer a child. I have my own judgment about things. Soon, I'll be working out of town. So please take care of yourselves. The relatives exchanged awkward glances. My aunt frowned and cleared her throat. You really are stubborn, aren't you? Thomas has been with you since he was a teenager, and you've held him up for so many years. Now that you're doing well, you just throw him away? Who's supposed to make sense of that? My second uncle followed up. That's right. Thomas even saved your life once. How can you be so ungrateful? I gave a cold laugh and turned my gaze to Thomas. He looked back at me and sighed. Ophelia, can you really bear to let go of 12 years of love? I smiled, raising an eyebrow as I looked at my aunt. Love is a matter between two people, isn't it? When we got together, if he hadn't wanted to, could I have held a knife to his throat and forced him? Over these 10+ years, you say I wasted Thomas's time, but didn't he waste mine too? You're a woman yourself. How can you think a woman's youth is worth less than a man's? And as for my success, that came from my own effort. Ask Thomas. Has he contributed even a bit? My aunt's face turned pale, her ears flushed red, and she couldn't find a word to say. Then I turned to my second uncle and frowned slightly. Yes, Thomas once saved my life, but I also saved Uncle Tang's. Even the parents who gave life to their child can't demand that the child spend their entire life repaying that debt, right? I've honored you and Aunt Tang, and I've been with Thomas for all these years, always considering him first. I have a clear conscience. My second uncle's face didn't look much better than my aunt's. Finally, I swept my cold gaze toward Thomas. Thomas, before you ask me whether I can give up more than 10 years of feelings, ask yourself first, wasn't it you who abandoned me? His eyes began to dart away, avoiding mine. When I was buying the house, you said you had a research project. When I was decorating it, you said you had an academic conference. When I bought the furniture, you were still busy. Do you know what that was? That was our promise. Not just my promise. When everything was finally done, you rushed over, took a glance, and said sarcastically, Ophelia, you're really rich. Thomas's face flushed red. I looked straight at him and asked, do you really not remember that? He shook his head, fumbling for an excuse. No, I just made a casual remark. That's all. I stood up and demanded, on my birthday, what were you doing? When I set the wedding date, what were you doing? And when I went to pick out our wedding supplies, where were you then? Thomas's eyes darted left and right, but not a single word came out of his mouth. I gave a cold laugh and pulled out a few photos. Let me remind you. The first photo, Alicia sitting beside him, holding a lunchbox, while he fed her a piece of green pepper steak with his chopsticks. On my birthday, you made my favorite dish, green pepper steak, and fed it to another woman. The second photo, Alicia holding his arm, gazing up at him with adoration as he smiled, utterly pleased. On the day I set our wedding date, when you were supposedly attending an academic conference, you were at a park on the outskirts of town, enjoying a lovely date with Alicia. The third photo, Alicia in his arms, both of them smiling radiantly with their eyes closed. When I went to pick out our wedding items, you left your fiancé behind to go to an amusement park with another girl. If I remember correctly, she kissed you on the Ferris wheel, and you didn't refuse. The relatives fell silent, not daring to say a word. Mrs. Tang and Mr. Tang glared at Thomas, faces full of anger. I looked at him too. Thomas, is this what you call loving me? He looked utterly embarrassed, but still forced himself to speak. You investigated me? Investigate? I scoffed. I was so busy back then, doing everything on my own. How would I have had time to investigate you? These are photos from Alicia's social media. Every place you went, everything you did, she wrote it all out clearly. Why did Alicia do that? It was simple, so I would find out. Alicia was a pretentious coquette through and through. But Thomas had failed the test as well. How does that saying go? Flies don't bite an uncracked egg. Thomas opened his mouth, but all that came out was a single, hollow syllable. Ah. I shook my head. Thomas, at first I wanted to leave you a bit of dignity, not because I still loved you, but because I didn't want to taint the beautiful memories I had. What I cherished wasn't you, it was the 12 years of feelings I once gave. Chapter 14. Thomas Tang stood there, utterly lost. Finally, he said dryly, Ophelia, Please listen to me. I didn't mean to betray you. I waved my hand and cut him off. That's enough. There's no need to say more. It doesn't matter anymore. Let's just leave it at that. I turned around to grab my bag, when suddenly, smack, a crisp sound rang through the air. I turned back to see a red handprint blooming across Thomas's face. Mrs. Tang was furious. How could you treat Ophelia like this? I worked so hard to raise you, and this is what I get, a shameless, ungrateful, dishonorable son. It was clear Mrs. Tang was truly enraged. Thomas hung his head, not daring to say a word. She scolded him for a long time before finally breaking down in tears. Clutching my hand, Ophelia, don't be like this. He was wrong. He truly was. If he weren't my son, I'd beat him to death myself. I hugged Mrs. Tang gently. It's already happened. Auntie, it's not your fault. She wiped her tears, staring at me earnestly. Child, please forgive Thomas. You've helped our family so much. I can't bear to see you hurt like this. Stay. I promise. Thomas will treat you well from now on. She shot Thomas a sharp glare, and he hurriedly stepped forward to apologize. I pushed him away. Auntie, there's no possibility between Thomas and me anymore. Thank you for all your care over the years. If you ever need my help, just call me. I won't be changing my number. Then I turned to pack my things. Thomas followed me into my room, grabbing my arm, his face full of remorse. Ophelia, I know I was wrong. Please don't leave me. I swear, I'll never do it again. I don't even like Alicia. You have to believe me. Please? He took out his phone, and right in front of me, deleted Alicia's contact on WeChat, blocking her number too. He looked at me sincerely. I've only ever loved you, from the time I was 16 until now. Honestly, knowing Thomas for more than a decade, I could believe that he might not truly like Alicia. But could he really not see what Alicia was doing? Did he not know that his ambiguous behavior with her was hurting me? Of course he knew. He was addicted to Alicia's adoration, using it to feed his fragile ego. From the moment he chose to blur the line between right and wrong, every ounce of clarity that followed became worthless to me. His indulgence, his moment of weakness, all of it was a choice. One he made knowing it would hurt me. Between us, there was no going back. Let it go. Thomas, I told you before, I never regret my decisions, and I don't take back my words. After packing my things, I went to say goodbye to Mrs. Tang. Most of the relatives had already left. In the now empty living room, she was sobbing uncontrollably, nearly collapsing to her knees. I barely caught her in time. Child, she cried, without you, your uncle would have died long ago. Our family owes our good days to you. It's all Thomas's fault, all of it. Please, forgive him. For my sake, I'm begging you. I wiped her tears gently and said softly, Auntie, neither you nor the Tang family owe me anything. The warmth you gave me, I'll never forget it for the rest of my life. Then, I picked up my things and walked out of the Tang house. As the door closed behind me, my tears finally fell. From this moment on, Ophelia, you're alone once more. Chapter 15. I moved to another city and soon adapted to my new life. My senior sister kept in touch often, teasing me from time to time. Oh, Ophelia, you're really pitiful now, nothing left but money. But beyond her teasing, she also told me many other things. After our breakup, Thomas never ended up with Alicia. He actually lost his temper at her, said many harsh, cutting words, and Alicia eventually gave up on him. Apparently, Alicia had some psychological issues. She wasn't interested in decent boys, but had a special fondness for men who were already married. She later fell for another senior student pursuing his graduate degree. Unfortunately, that senior was married. Maybe she had regained her confidence from her time with Thomas, because she used the same tactics again, constantly messaging him, asking him out to play. But the senior's wife wasn't someone to be trifled with. Every seductive photo and flirty message Alicia had sent was printed out by the wife and plastered all over the apartment complex where Alicia lived. The wife even hung a banner and used a loudspeaker to play a message for 8 hours a day. Unit 1, 3rd floor. Apartment 2 to 3, Simon family raises their daughter well. Their daughter Alicia fell in love at first sight with my husband and won't stop chasing him. I sincerely wish them happiness and hereby give up my position voluntarily. In front of the neighbors, Alicia's father slapped her hard across the face. The scandal spread quickly. Alicia dropped out of school on her own accord. It's said that the whole family moved away. No one knows where they went. Chapter 16. 12 years of affection isn't simply black or white. There were moments of beauty and moments of pain. The bright, radiant boy I once loved had already drifted far from me. Still, I would keep walking toward the light, forward. Always forward, even if I was walking alone. As for Thomas, even though I tried to avoid hearing anything about him, I eventually learned, years later, that he remained alone. But what does it matter? Affection that comes too late is cheaper than grass.